What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to take a look at building static sites with Gatsby. Gatsby is by far the most popular static site generator in the React ecosystem and has numerous plugins to enhance its functionality. Since I have a series on static site generators, I'd figured I'd take a look at Gatsby. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the basics of Gatsby, then we'll take a look at the central GraphQL store. Okay, so let's install it first. Let's get started. Let's go to a quick start. And make sure you have the Gatsby CLI installed. I already do, so I won't do that. And after that, you can call Gatsby new. So let's do that. Let's call it Gatsby example. Okay, that's done. Let's cd into it. And we can run Gatsby develop to run the dev server. Okay, so here's the default boilerplate that comes with Gatsby. So let's go ahead and open this in my code editor to take a look around. So you can see we have a source folder. This default component is in there somewhere. It's in components. Actually, it's in pages, index, and there's also a page 2. You can see here, and there's the page 2 component, or the page 2 page. We have a default layout, which they extend from, called layout, which can be found in here. As you can see, we're importing here, and then here it is right here, layout.js. We have a Gatsby config, which we'll make use of when we have to configure some plugins. And we also have this Gatsby node file, which we'll also make use of when we pull in external data. So, as you expect, if we make a new page here under pages, this should work. So let me just quickly duplicate this. Page 3. And let's change this to third page and say page 3. Hi from the third page. And page 3. Oops. Okay. And if you go back, we can hit that route, and that should work. Cool. Okay, so I want to add sort of like a menu here that has all the pages. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's look in our layout. So here's our layout, and as you can see, it's pulling in a header component. So we can just go into there. And you can see here, there is a div with some inline styles, and there's an H1 in there. So I'm going to make use of this and just add some CSS in here. So I'm just going to quickly put a flex container. So I can do justify content space between, and then have this on the left, and then some links on the right. So let's just do display flex, and then let's do align items center, and then I'm going to do justify content space between. Okay. Now this is one flexed item, and then this one should be another one. Let's just say right. Let's just see if this works first. Okay, so that's good. And let's just add the links in there. So I'm going to use this link component instead of anchor tags. So let's do that. Link. Say 2 equals. So this one will go to page 2. So page 2. Say page 2. And let's make one for page 3 as well. And let me quickly just add some styles to make it white. So let's do style equals color white. And for this one, I want a margin on it. So margin left, let's say 12. Okay, let's see if this works. There we go. and they should work correctly. And this already goes back to the index. Cool. So you can also have a nested folder structure if you want to have folders and a corresponding index.js file. So for example, if I did nested, and then let's just put this in there. New file, index.js, just paste that in. And let me just fix this. Say nested page. And we can just leave these, but we also have to change this because it's one level deeper. So that, and this one too. And now we should be able to go to nested, and then this will be the default page, and we can add other pages here too if we want. So it'll be nested / whatever the name of the file is. So nested. There we go. Okay, now let's take a look at layouts. As I said earlier, we have this default layout here and a corresponding CSS file. And sometimes you want multiple layouts, and we're actually going to need a different one later on when we create a blog. So I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to call it layout blog. And I'm just going to change this to layout blog, and also this to layout blog. And this, now this is duplicated in both layouts, but I'm just going to leave it. But I'm just going to show you here in layout blog. Let's just add an extra T in there. And this should now be a new layout. And let's say for page 3, we want to extend this new layout. So instead of layout, we want layout blog. And that should do it. Here, layout blog. And that should do it. So page 3 should have that layout, but we have this error. I think we need to go back here. And yeah, we have to change this. So let me just change the name of the query here, and that should fix it. And now in page 3, sorry, yeah, I forgot to import the correct thing. So now, sorry, yes, I forgot to change this as well. So now, there we go. This one is using the new layout, and these other ones still use the original one. Cool. Okay, so now with that knowledge, we can make a very basic blog and expand upon it as we go along. So I want to have a Blogroll on the main page here, and then go to the specific blog post. So let's go ahead and go back into our code. Let's go into our pages directory, and let's make a new folder here. Let's call it blog HTML, because later on I'm going to make another folder called blog, which we'll use Markdown for. But for now, we'll stick to React components. So I'm going to make a new file. Let's call it blog post1.js. And I'm just going to take what we have here in page 3, because we're extending from this layout blog. And I'm going to paste it in there. So right here, I'm going to paste that. And let me just change this. Say blog post 1. And let's change this title as well. I didn't take a look at this earlier, but it's just the title in the browser. And we use the SEO component for that. So blog post 1. You'll see that when we load this page. Blog post 1. And let's just put some lorem text in here. Oops. Okay, so now, just like we did before, let's just go to blog HTML, blog post 1. And what did I do wrong? I thought I did this. I thought I copied from the third page because it's nested now. Let's see if that fixes it. Okay, so that worked. And obviously we can make more blog posts, which I'll do behind the scenes, but let's add a Blogroll, which lists all the blog posts. And again, this is just manual for now. Then we'll make it dynamic later on. So let's go into index. And over here, I am going to put an H2. Let's say manual Blogroll. And let's just do ULLI. Damn you. I want emit. Okay. Link to, and let's just say blog HTML blog post 1. Okay. And let's just say blog post 1. And obviously that should work because we're doing everything manually right now. Okay, cool. So I'm going to make a few more blog posts behind the scenes and update this as well. Okay, so I've added a few more blog posts here, and here they are, blog post 2 and 3. Okay, now I'd like to make this a bit more dynamic and also explore the GraphQL capabilities of Gatsby. If you're not familiar with GraphQL, I have an entire series on it, and even if you don't watch that, you can still follow along. GraphQL is a way to query your data, and in this case, all of the information in our site is stored in a GraphQL central store. So whether that's site information, the information about all the pages, or any external data from any external APIs, they are all stored in GraphQL. So let me show you an example. So if we go back into our server, if we go up here, let me just restart this. Okay, so you see this URL, which you can hit, and then it will have a GraphQL client, which you can make GraphQL queries in. And I already have all this from the project I played with, but we'll start from scratch. So, like I said, you can query your data. So at the most basic level, we can query information about the site. So site metadata, and we can get the title, the description, and the author. And if we do that, we can see Gatsby default starter and the author. So that lives in the config. So right here. And as you expect, if you change this, this will reflect in the GraphQL. And let's do one more query together. Let's take a look at all the pages in our site. So if you wanted to make this menu up here, this menu up here dynamic, so every time you add a page, it automatically updates this. This is what you would use, and we'll do something similar for the blogs. But let me just show you this query. So all site page. And then we can get the edges. So the edges is the collection, and the node is the actual item. So the actual page. So within here is the information about the page. So there's a lot here, but we can just grab the path. And there we go. So here's all the pages in our site. These are by default. There's four pages. Here's the manual blog we have. Here's all the ones we did earlier. And that is the basics of the GraphQL store, which we'll continue to make use of as we progress. Okay, so with this knowledge, I'd like to make our blog more dynamic and make use of this GraphQL. So like I just said, I want this to be dynamic, and I want to use Markdown as well. So we have to install a few plugins. Before I do, this is the blog post I followed. I think it's linked from the Gatsby site. It's a bit dated, but it's still relevant. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll refer to this if we need it. I'll put it over here. Okay, so let's go to the plugins site. And the ones we need are Gatsby Transformer Remark, and what's the other one? The file system. So Gatsby source file system is already installed, I believe. Let's just check our config. So yeah, it is Gatsby source file system. And we have to install this one. And this one just converts Markdown to HTML. So first, let's configure the file system. So what this does is allows us to see files in our file system. And as you can see here, there's one configured for the images directory, which is in here. But we want another one. So I can change this if I wanted to, but we'll just leave that and we'll add another one. So I'm just going to do this. And let's call it blog. And I'm going to put it in source pages blog. Okay. And the next one we have to install transformer remark. So I'm going to do this. Let me just actually go here and stop it. Okay, that's done. Let's take a look at how to install it. Okay, so we can just grab all of this and paste it in our config. And we don't need any of this, so we just need the resolve. Let's do that. So I'm going to put it here in the bottom, right here. And I'm going to remove all these options. Okay. Okay, so now let's restart our server. And I have an error. I think that's the error. I think I'm missing a closing bracket. Yes. Let me just do that. Okay. Save that. Let's run this again. Okay, so we have another error. It's saying that this directory does not exist. So let me go ahead and make that. So pages blog. So like this one here, new folder, blog. And I'm going to put a markdown file in here. Let's call it blog markdown1.md. And instead of writing markdown from scratch, I'm just going to paste in some markdown here. So we have this YAML front matter, which allows us to make variables about this specific blog post. So in this case, we have the title and the path. So in the end, it's going to be the base URL / blog markdown1. And here's some markdown here and different elements of markdown. We have like a code block here, some itemized lists, and a block quote. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 more here. Okay, so I added 2 more here. So now, if I run Gatsby develop again, this should work now. Okay, so now we should be able to see all our markdown files in our GraphQL. So let me go back here. I'm going to refresh this. And now I'm going to comment this out. And let's see if we have a query for getting all the markdown pages. So new query. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties again and I had to reboot my computer. So back to this query. Now we should be able to have a query that shows all of our markdown. So all markdown remark. Again, we can do edges, node, and we can get the HTML. We can also get the front matter variables. So let's get the title in here, and that should work. There we go. We have 3 in our file system, and here is the information for those markdown files. Okay, so now if we go back into our code, go to our index.js, let's make another one here, and this one will be called automatic Blogroll. Let's call it automatic Blogroll, and let's make a UL here. And then in here, I want to do some JSX. So I'm going to do data.all markdown remark .edges, because remember the edges is the collection. And I'm going to map over them. And I'm going to get a post. And for each post, I am going to make a list item. And I have to do that manually. This should be data. Why do you keep changing my code, VS Code? Okay. There should be a key in here actually. And that should be post.node.id. And we want to make a link. Let me move this up for you guys. So link 2 equals, it's going to be post node front matter path. And then we're going to have a title in here. So post node front matter title. And this is coming from the GraphQL query that we just did. So this GraphQL, which we have to do in our code, which I'll show you right now. Actually, first we have to accept the data up here in our function. So let's destructure it out. Sorry, this should be like this. Okay. And now we can do the GraphQL query. So I'm going to do export const page query equals GraphQL. And then we can put the query in here. So let's make sure we're importing GraphQL. So we can import it from Gatsby. Okay. And now we can just grab the GraphQL query that we did. Let's grab this, paste it in here. Let me just indent that. And you don't have to do this, but I'm going to name the query blog index query. And I don't need the HTML, but I do need the ID. So I'm going to change that. And I think that should work, hopefully. Let's go back here. And there we go. There's our automatic Blogroll. Let me just refresh it again. And it's not going to work here yet because we have to define a template. So as you can see, it's undefined here. So we have to add the path in here. And that should now link to the correct one. It does. Okay, cool. But now this won't work. Okay, so let's fix that. So first we have to make a template. So if we go in here, we have to make a templates folder in our source folder. So let's make one, templates, and let's make one for our blog post. So we'll name it blog post.js. And I'm just going to paste some code in chunks here just to save a bit of time. So the first is the imports, just importing everything we need. This is stuff you've already seen. Next is the template, which I'll paste in here. And it's getting the post from the query, which we'll do in a second. And this is just typical layout stuff that we've done before. And it's setting the title and the title again in an H1. And this is the actual HTML that's converted from Markdown. And before I do the GraphQL query, let me just paste in another query, in our GraphQL Explorer here, just to show you how to get one specific Markdown page. So I'm going to paste it in. Instead of all Markdown remark, it's just Markdown remark. And we have to get the front matter and match the path. It's a bit confusing. It's a bit too deeply nested in my opinion, but just stick with me and you'll see. And this should just get the Markdown file in that path. So there we go. So now in our code, this is going to be the basis of our GraphQL query. And I'm just going to paste it in. And the only difference is it's taking a variable now, and I named it. But it's basically doing the same thing. And now, this is not done yet, because we have to do one more step. And that is to generate the page for each of our Markdown pages. So if you go into this article I was talking about earlier, it shows you how to do it here. This is basically where I got it from. So you can see here, it's creating the React template, which is what we just did. And we did this already. And now we have to create the static pages. So we have to make use of the Node API, which is this file right here, Gatsby Node. And I'm just going to grab everything here and paste it in. Okay. And let me just do this. And let's go through this and make any necessary changes. So here we're specifying where the template lives, which we just created. This is the Markdown that we want. And in our case, we don't want this. So I'm going to delete this. And let's get it from our GraphQL Explorer here. So I think it was this one. I'm just going to copy that. And then we'll put it in here. Let's indent it. And I'm just going to add the ID in here and the path for the front matter. Okay. And if there's errors, it will reject it. And here is where it's going to iterate over all the results in the GraphQL and create a page. And hopefully this works. So you're going to have to restart your server. And that looks like it did work. Let's take a look. So now if you go back into here, now if you go to one of these pages, this should work. And it does. Cool. So here's the first page. You're seeing double titles because in our pages, blog Markdown, we have this, but in our template, we're also showing the title here in H1. So you can delete it in here if you want, or you can delete it in the template and just specify it in the Markdown. Up to you. So if I delete this, there should only be one. Okay, cool. So this is the browser's default styles, but if you want some basic CSS for GitHub flavored Markdown, you can use this package over here, which I've used in a few of my videos in my static site generators. So it's just a minimal amount of CSS to replicate GitHub Markdown style. So I'm just going to use it. Where is it? From the CDN. You can npm install it too, but I find this to be a bit easier. I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to go back into our code. And in our components, we have a layout. So in our layout blog, if you want, you can extend another CSS file if you want, but I'm just going to stick to this. So URL, it's like this. And then we have to, what do we have to do? We have to add a Markdown body class to anything that we want for Markdown. And we also have to add these styles. So I'm going to add these in the template. In the CSS. And then we have to wrap the layout blog in a Markdown body class. So we can do that in here. Class equals Markdown body. And I'm going to remove this T here. Okay. And now, if we go here, there we go. This is GitHub flavored Markdown. It might not be a big difference, but you can see the block quotes has this extra style, this extra vertical line here. And these ones don't because they don't extend the layout blog, but the manual one does too. Okay, cool. Let's check out the other Markdown pages. Okay, looks like it works. Cool. Okay, so I want to do one more quick example of how to fetch data from an external API. The first thing you should do is check if there's a plugin, because the plugin ecosystem is quite extensive and the chances are there's a plugin that was written. For example, we're going to be working with the Reddit API, and I'm pretty sure there's one for Reddit, and there is, but we're just going to do it manually just to show you how to do it. So I've done this several times already on my channel. Make use of the Reddit API. If you're not familiar, if you go to any subreddit, I'm going to use aw and add .json. You'll get a JSON representation of all the posts on that front page. So with that knowledge, I'm going to pull in these posts into our GraphQL Central Store and show them in our app. So I found this thread over here, which shows how to get data into your GraphQL store. And I'm basically going to copy and paste this and make use of it. So first I have to install Axios. I'm going to stop this first. So I'm going to do npm install Axios. And while that's going, I'm going to copy this and take everything here and paste that into our node server. So down here, where is it? Gatsby node. Okay, so I'm going to start and paste it here. So we import Axios and crypto. And the first thing I'm going to do is just change this bound action creators. There should be actions. It still works, but you'll get an error message or just a warning saying it's deprecated. So let's just change that to actions. And here is where it's getting the data from an external API using Axios. So I'm going to change this name to fetch Reddit posts. And the endpoint is going to be www.reddit.com/r/aw.json, and I have to add this query string to make it work correctly. Raw JSON equals 1. Okay, and then we're going to await fetch Reddit posts. And here we are going to map the results and create nodes. So this is adding a node in your for each GraphQL element. So let's say post a node. So this first I have to change this. It's not res.data, it's res.data.data.children, because this is the collection we want to iterate over. In our case, it's the posts. So I just know this because I've worked with the Reddit API several times, but it's still open. Yeah, so data is the thing coming back. Data children. So data children. Let's change this to post. So the ID is going to be post.data.id. So this is going to be the name of the GraphQL query. So in our case, it's going to be Reddit post for one and all Reddit post for all of them. And we can leave this. So other fields. So I'm going to remove all of these and just put them on the top level. So I'm going to do title, post.data.title, path, /Reddit / post.data.id. So this is going to be the path we visit in our URL. And then thumbnail, post.data.thumbnail. You can destructure post.data as well, but I'm okay with this. Post.data.preview.images. First one, source.url. So yeah, if you're not familiar with what's going on here, just look at the JSON coming back from the Reddit API. Now this stuff, to be completely honest with you, I'm not sure what this does. I think it has to do with the ID of the GraphQL element. So the only thing I need to change here is this user node. So it should be post node. Okay. So now, hopefully I did that correctly. And if I did, I'm going to restart the server. And we should be able to see the Reddit posts in our GraphQL store. So all of these Reddit posts should be available in our GraphQL. Cannot read property map of undefined. Sorry, typo, which took me forever to figure out. Children. Okay, now this should work. Okay, so no errors. So now if we go into our GraphQL, refresh it, I'm gonna comment this out. And now we should have access to our Reddit posts. And there it is, all Reddit posts. So we can do edges, node, and we have access to the fields that we created. So let's say title, let's put the ID in there as well, and the image. So there are our posts coming from the JSON Reddit API. Okay, so now let's go back, and I want to make another section here for our Reddit posts. So let's go into our index.js, and I am going to duplicate this, and let's call it Reddit posts. And instead of all Markdown remark, we can do all Reddit post. And the ID will stay the same. And then this will just go to the path. And this will be the title. And we just have to specify the query down here. So we can just grab that in here in a graphical, grab that and paste that in. Let's indent that, and we're going to add the path in here, and let's add the thumbnail as well, although I'm not probably going to use the thumbnail, but it's okay. Let's try that. Fresh. And I think I put the query in the wrong place. So yeah, I'm going to take this, I'm going to remove this, and it has to be within this one. You only can have one root one, so it should be within here. So now this should work, hopefully. And there we go. There is all our Reddit posts showing in our index. So just like our blog posts in Markdown, we have to make a template and we have to create pages for them. So let's go ahead and quickly do that. So let's make a new template called Reddit post. And I am just going to copy some code in here, paste some code in here just to save some time. And here's our typical imports. Here's our GraphQL query, but now we're just querying for one Reddit post. And here is what we're returning. So just the title, and then we want the image, which we're getting from here. And now, again, we have to go in here, and down here where we're creating pages, we can do the same thing here. So I'm going to do this. Actually, I have to add the query here. So I'm just going to paste that in right here. All Reddit post, and just getting everything from the Reddit post. And now in here, we can have the node path. And this is a Reddit template. Did I specify that up there? I'm not sure if I did. So right here, we have to specify the Reddit template. Okay, this is Reddit post. Okay, so I'm going to stop my server. I'm going to rerun it. So we get an error here. I think I have to, oh, sorry, I've changed this to all Reddit post. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, it looks like that was successful, and with any luck, this should work now. After I refresh, it's go to 1, and there it is. There is our Reddit post template working, and all the pages are generated correctly. Awesome. So note that this is not dynamic at runtime. By that I mean if the user refreshes the page, new data will not get pulled in. The only time new data gets updated is when you use Gatsby to build your site. There is an option to make it act like a typical dynamic React component, but we're not going to take a look at that here. Okay, let's quickly deploy this on Netlify, and then we'll call it a day. So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to commit this. First commit, and I'm going to make a GitHub query using the GitHub CLI. So hub create, and I'm going to push. Okay, so when you run Gatsby build, it goes into a public folder, and we can do it here locally, but I'm just going to do it on Netlify servers. So let's go to Netlify. Just log in here, and you can see the other sites that I did for the other static site generators. And let's look for the one we just created, Gatsby. Okay, there it is. Okay, and it detected it. Cool. And that should do it. Let's deploy this, and it will take a minute or so.
A few moments later.
Okay, so it looks like it's working. Let's preview. And there's our site on the Netlify server. So let's just verify that everything works. These are our static pages, page 3. And our manual Blogroll. Okay. And our automatic Blogroll with Markdown. Cool. And our Reddit posts. Awesome. So there you have it, guys. We've taken a look at the basics of Gatsby for React in order to build a static site. Hopefully you see the features it has to offer and why it's so popular. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.